Hey, hockey fans, T-Boz is 13-3 here with another top shelf guest, North Dakota native, 3-time captain and 2-time national champion with the Minnesota Gophers, and current head coach at Northern Michigan University, Grant Potulny. This episode is sponsored by Kelly Heating and Electric, Computer Recovery Associates, Dooley's Pub, and Chippewa Valley Orthopedics and Sports Medicine. Mogi.
Hey, we want to thank Coach Potulny so much for hosting us here in his coaching office at the Barrie Event Center in Marquette, Michigan. As you can see behind us, he's got a beautiful puck display of the Upper Peninsula of Michigan here. So we're excited to be here and excited to hear your story, Coach.
Thanks, Mogi.
Why don't you give us a little story, Coach, about the pucks behind us?
So we redid the locker room, and it was going to happen right when COVID hit. And obviously, that slowed us down in some of those things. But along the way, every dollar that we raised for this locker room was either from alumni or it was from local people, which I think is very unique in a town our size. So what we have there is we wanted to pay homage to all of our alums, and it's almost impossible in a lot. It's just too many people, so you can't put them all up. But that's an alumni wall. So anytime you graduate or if an alum visits, we ask them to sign a puck. So the hope is that soon we could have, and that'll be full this summer because we have a reunion. We have an all hockey reunion, and I have to imagine that thing will get pretty full this summer.
Now, can you put a couple names on each puck maybe to spread it out a little more?
Well, we might have to, but right now you get your own puck.
First come, first serve. Get here, boys, while there's still open pucks.
All right. North Dakota native, obviously with the University of North Dakota, great hockey hotbed there. What introduced you to the game of hockey?
It probably came up on my mom's side of the family. Her brothers all played. She comes from a family. She has 8 brothers and sisters. So it's a big family. They all played high school hockey growing up. Man, my dad didn't. My mom played basketball in North Dakota. My dad played basketball and baseball. My dad can't skate. He's from a small farming town. So my mom's from a farming town also, but it's a small farming town that had hockey. So she kind of got me into it. And actually, you know, with my brother played in the NHL, my cousin played in the NHL, all kind of from that lineage of that family. So it was a pretty good hockey family.
Thanks, Mom.
Yeah. Obviously, that's it. You played high school hockey at Red River High School. Won 19 state hockey championships, including 3 in a row, 96, 97, 98. And you were a member of each of those teams and maybe even captain at that time. Yeah,
we had Red River hadn't won in a while. You know, the town where my mom is from, Grafton, had won. Grand Forks Central, which was a rival, had won. But we hadn't. And you know, it just kind of was right group of kids at the right time. And, you know, we ended up winning 3 state tournaments in a row. And at that time, the games were played at the Ralph Engelstad Arena. Obviously, it's the old Ralph. And I don't know if any of you guys have been there, but it's probably about 7,500 seats. And the rink would be completely sold out. Completely. So like the thing would start and like the bands would come through and like, I mean, it was really cool. Like my grandfather, had never seen a game. He's a farmer and he didn't understand sport. You know what I mean? It just wasn't what farmers didn't do that. They just, you could play sports, but you'd come back to the farm. So when my dad decided not to go back to the farm, and run the farm, I think my grandfather was a little disappointed. And part of it, I think my dad's thought, well, if I stay in this Grand Forks, it's a little bit bigger, maybe the kids could have other opportunities. So when he came to that high school game, he was kind of like, wow.
That's a big deal.
I get it. You know, so it was kind of cool.
So Grand Forks is right on the border between North Dakota and Minnesota, separated by the Red River there. So how much of North Dakota hockey is influenced by Minnesota in that particular area? And then if you can expand on how far has the game expanded in North Dakota? Is it the whole state, or is it just that area, or maybe fill us in on that?
Yeah. I mean, I think we'll probably touch on it later, but the funny part about where we grew up, like we lived right on the river. So, I mean, I'm like 5-iron to Minnesota. Like I could sit in the backyard and hit a 5-iron across the river. So fast forward, 15 years later, when I go to Minnesota, I was the first player not from the state of Minnesota in 20-some plus years.
Yeah, we're going to get there.
But like I'm from a 5-iron away. But my point is basically it's the same culture. It's the same background. I don't think at that time there wasn't as many players playing hockey in North Dakota, and they were only really Grand Forks, Fargo, and this small little farming town, Grafton, where my mom was from. Now, like you go, there's hockey academies in Grand Forks, there's hockey academies in Fargo. The western part of the state used to, like it honestly, it wouldn't matter 1, 2, 3, or 4, because you got seeded 1, 2, 3, 4 in the East and 1, 2, 3, 4 in the West, and then you go to the state tournament. It didn't matter because even the 4 from the East was going to beat the 1 from the West by 2 or 3 goals minimum. So there was just such a disparity.
Yeah.
That's not the case anymore. That's getting better. So I'm glad to see the evolution of hockey in North Dakota, and there's good players coming from there now.
Awesome. That's so it's growing in the state. That's wonderful.
Yes, definitely growing.
Good.
This last week, we interviewed a former women Badger hockey player who came off of a farm in Canada, and one of her favorite things to do when to get in shape, which she absolutely hated, was baling hay. Is that something you had to do too? And if so, was that what got you into shape to play hockey?
I wasn't as. I probably got a free pass because I played baseball, so I got a little bit of a pass. So that was my way out.
I got practice, Dad.
Yeah, I got to go to practice. Yeah.
So talking about your high school, when I was looking at how you did as far as progressing, Red Rivers won several state championships in a number of sports. So you said you played baseball. Any football or anything else that did you do up there?
Well, that was the time where, and I don't necessarily know that you can as a hockey player. Unfortunately, I don't necessarily know that when you get to high school, you're able to do what I was able to do and be able to compete in all these sports, because there was one summer hockey event that you went to, and that was it. And you just tell your baseball coach, I'm going to be gone. Like, I got to be gone for this, because I'm a hockey player first.
Yep.
And they understood. They were great. So there was some training starting in hockey. But for me, I always thought, what better way to get into shape than play football? Because that's basically what you're doing. I mean, you're running tires and you're running sprints and you're, lifting weights and you're, so I played football. And then when that was done, I went to hockey. And when that was done, I went to baseball. So it it was just almost a rotation.
So there was time during the summer that you actually hung the blades up, did your baseball thing, and then brought the blades back out when winter hit.
Well, yeah, because there wasn't anywhere to put the blades. Like, there's no ice anywhere. It's just the way it was.
Back at that time, Grant, was there any type of off-ice conditioning that your coaches had you doing, stick handling, agility drills, anything?
Oh, yeah, I think you did your own stick handling. It was probably the beginning of some of the off-ice training. I don't think it worked its way into Grand Forks yet, but I bet you in some of the bigger cities, Minneapolis, Boston, Chicago, Detroit, I'm sure they were doing it. We just kind of weren't there yet. It just hasn't worked its way to us yet.
Okay.
For our listeners, what position did you play and how did you choose that position?
In hockey?
Yes.
Well, when I was younger, I could always score. I wasn't. Skating was something that always was an issue for me, but I think skating's the easiest thing to fix. And but because I could score, I was a forward. I wasn't a good enough skater to play center. So by default, you end up over on the wing.
going into the corners.
That's right.
Dishing it out to the center.
That's
a
right.
lot of times.
You got to get. Yep. You got to know what you are.
So what was your specialty move? Were you a deker? Were you just a plain old shooter? How did you get your goals?
I kind of got a lot of them by the net. Like I
Garbage area type of thing. Yeah.
Yep. I'd be down there a lot. No, you'd get the other off the rush and you'd get the whatevers, but that was an area I ended up being pretty good just by the net.
You were a little bit gritty then, standing in front of the net and getting hacked by the defenseman and goalie and whatever else.
Yeah, and it's just kind of. I think you have to have a self-awareness of who you are too. Like there was a lot of players that were much better than me at Bantam high school. You know what I mean? Like they just were. They were faster. They had better stick skill. Whatever it was. And every year I just kind of closed the gap on them. But I had to be able to make all those teams to be able to stay there, so I could close the gap. So that's what I did because that was what people didn't want to do. So if I figured if I could do this and the coach liked it, I had a good chance playing the team.
Do what you got to do to make the team. That's crazy. It's not like the coach is going to change himself for you. You got to change the way the coach is going to want it to have it done, right?
You got to become valuable.
Yeah.
How are you going to be valuable to the guy coaching the team?
So on the power play, were you that guy in the front?
Yep.
Front
yep. That's where I played in the power play. Even at college, like the guys that I played with on the power play in college were first round picks and Olympians and NHL All-Stars, but at some point it had to get to the net. So I figured if I'm down at the net, it's coming here at some point.
Let's hope so anyway, right?
So I hung out.
A long game if you didn't.
So
that goalie drops it or kicks out a juicy rebound, and in she goes.
That's right.
After high school, you played in the USHL for a couple of years. Did you get drafted, or was that one of those deals where you just did a walk-on with the USHL?
That was the era of the tender. So at this time, teams had 5 tenders, 10, whatever the number was. So the guy coaching the Lincoln Stars was actually from Grand Forks, played for North Dakota. And there was, kind of when I went there, a couple local North Dakota guys went with me same time. And then there was just a run of Grand Forks kids and North Dakota kids because Steve knew the kind of the kids coming from Grand Forks. So, did a recruiting visit to Omaha, and Lincoln, and the coach in Omaha was Mike Hastings and the coach in Lincoln was Steve Johnson. So I ended up playing that next year on a USA team. I think they call it the Junior A Challenge now, but it used to be called the Viking Cup. And Hasty was the coach, and we won the gold medal for the first time ever. So, it kind of comes around a little bit. But there's a lot of people that are from Grand Forks, northern Minnesota, the Saratories, small towns in Minnesota, Bob Moscow, southern Minnesota, Mike Hastings, Crookston, Steve Johnson, Grand Forks. Like, there's just a lot of guys in coaching that are from, Don Lucia, northern Minnesota. Like, there's just that it's just kind of was a hotbed. So people appreciated that kind of player.
So let's talk a little bit about Hastings. He just got a new job. Coach Hastings is new coach at University of Wisconsin, Madison Badgers. What do you think about that?
I think it's great. I think he's doing a great job. I think it's a great job. I think they have great facilities. Yeah, I mean, I think the run that they had at Mankato was over whether it's 8, 10 years, however you want to look at it, was probably as impressive of a run as anybody could have gone on. And a ton of it had to do with their ability to coach and recruit and, find players and put fires out and build kids up. And, all that stuff falls into coaching. But they also, some of the crazy things that happened, like they beat Bowling Green at the end of a game, and they scored 2 6-on-5 goals to get to overtime and win. They did the same thing against us this year to win a championship. They, the Bemidji thing last year where the puck went in and didn't go. You know what I mean? So you make your own breaks, and those guys made a lot of breaks over that 10 years. So I wish them well, and I think Luke Strand's going to do a great job at Mankato. It's just kind of the evolution of it sometimes, right? Like coaches move and things happen, and your program moves on, and your team, like, that's just, they bring, there's a whole support staff and fan base, and that, like, they're ready to continue to win, and and that's just what's expected. So that'll be the job now of Luke and his staff, is to build off of where they are, because they built themselves into a team that you expected to see in the tournament every year.
Right.
I just read an article that Hastings signed an all-time largest contract for college hockey coaches. Does that give incentive for like yourself or other coaches now to sit down at the table and say, hey, Madison's paying out some super big bucks here. Can we, like the...
Hey, he can buy the beers.
Oh, there you go.
He's got extra change.
All right, Mike, if you listen to this podcast, beer's on you.
Yeah.
I like that.
So speaking of regime changes, you came here in 17-18, your first year as a head coach here. You had a good year, 25-15-3. That summer, they signed you to an 8-year deal through the 25-26 season. So they must kind of like you up here, huh?
It worked out really well. I mean, I think I walked into a situation where, so, there's only been 3 coaches in the history of the program, and obviously, Coach Comley is the godfather, and we all stand on his shoulders. But Walt had built a really good team. I think he knew it. I think the year before they had some injuries and just some weird things that had happened. So, you walk into a team that, there's a new breath with it, because it's just new coach energy, right? That just happens. But they were kind of ready to take that step, and it was a fun, really fun group to work with. Very exciting season. We hosted the championship game that year. It was a really probably important season for our players, for us as a staff, and for the community of Marquette.
Let's go back a little bit. USHL, you had a couple of standout years. When are the Gophers starting to look at you?
Or any college team for that matter, right?
Oh,
yeah,
absolutely.
Yep. No, it was a good point. So I my first year in the USHL, for the first kind of half of the year, I would play a couple games and then I would be a scratch, and then I'd play a couple games and be a scratch. I couldn't get traction, to be consistent enough. And so by the end of the year, I kind of got the consistency to be where I needed to be. And then that following year, the season started, and I had some crazy recruiting stories.
We're all ears.
So I went on one visit, and I really liked it, and appreciated it, and I was excited about going there. I wanted to go there. I called my dad. I said, I want to go here. He's like, well, it's pretty early in the year. Just wait. So that was hard for me, because it was the first team that had really shown interest.
Sure.
So then I go to Michigan State, and Coach Mason's the coach. And, but he says in my recruiting visit, like, I'm not going to be here. So, but you know who the coach would have been? Coach Comley.
Yeah.
So had I gone there, I would have played for Coach Comley. So then I go to Wisconsin. Jeff Sauer's the coach. Jeff tells me not going to be here. So then I go to Duluth. Surtees the coach.
Not going to be here. Holy cow. How could that possibly happen?
So, like you're kind of just, and at the time, my best friend that we played baseball together growing up, he was a quarterback at Wisconsin, winning Rose Bowls. So like he was the man. And I'm like, well, I hadn't fallen in love with anything yet. And like I tell kids on their visit, where you want to go. like you'll know in 4 days after you see everybody where you want to go. And you might know before that. Like when you lay in bed at night and you're daydreaming and you're looking up at the ceiling, what are you thinking about? Like you're thinking about that school. So I didn't have that feeling yet. I hadn't gotten there. And then I went on a recruiting visit to Minnesota and I felt that. Like I had that feeling. And then from that point on, I knew that's where I wanted to be.
And traditionally at that point, Minnesota had gone with pretty standard Minnesota boys across the board, and they went across the river and picked you. That must have felt pretty good for you.
Well, part of the thing too is like, I'm sure I know I wasn't the first guy. There's lots of people that said no. I think Don wanted to expand outside of the borders of the state just to, and I guarantee you that they took a run at a couple guys that probably said no. But my thought process was, this has got to work for them too. So, like they're not going to bring me there and not give me a chance. And lo and behold, I got every chance I could ever imagine there.
And capitalized on most of them, from what I recall.
They worked out pretty good, yeah.
Going to shout out a couple of sponsors, and we're going to get to those chances that he capitalized on.
There you go. Dooley's Pub has been Eau Claire's home for hockey and all sports fans since 2005. Dooley's Pub is a proud booster of the University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire and all local high schools. Dooley's is located on historic Water Street, providing excellent food and service. And every time I've gone there, the beer's always been cold. Chippewa Valley Orthopedics and Sports Medicine has been committed to the healthcare needs of patients in western Wisconsin since 1954. The orthopedic surgeons and athletic trainers serve many area schools. Their success and reputation as an outstanding orthopedic clinic can be attributed to the fact that Mogi and I have both been there on numerous occasions, and we've come all out in one piece so far.
There you go. For the most part, everything's working. That's good.
Mogi?
So, Coach, you played at the start of the Don Lucia era at the U and won 2 national championships. So what do you think it was that Coach Lucia brought to the program that put it over the top?
I think he had, obviously he did a great job recruiting. We had a great team. But he had just a very high set of standards where, and like that's who, like, you talk about mentors. That's who, like, I spent 12 years with him, 4 as a player and 8 as an assistant. Yeah. He was always fair. We didn't always like what he was saying or do, but it was fair. And he was cool as an ice cube. Like in the most important, stressful environments, like he would have never known. And it's just like, that's the one thing I'll always like. There's very little emotion from Don. And a lot of times emotion is detrimental to players. And that wasn't Don. Don was very calm. It just felt like we were going to win. We always just felt like we were going to win.
That's got to be feeling good for a player.
It's a great feeling.
A really good feeling.
I'm going to ask you a question that I never imagined in my life I would be asking you, because I was at this game, and that is in 2002 national championship against Maine at the XL Energy Center. You scored the game-winning goal in overtime. Has that got to be your greatest memory of hockey?
That was an awesome night. That was I actually didn't play very good in that game.
Well, we weren't going to mention that, but
well, you must have played well enough to be out there in overtime.
Well, that's interesting too. Here's to your point with Don. I was a -2, and I took a penalty, and they scored. So we get to 6-on-5, and it's all year it was power play +1. So it was, I'm on this power play, and there's this power play, and there'd be a +1 guy. Well, before that 6-on-5, I don't go, and he sends out Matt Kowalska. Matt scored arguably the biggest goal in the history of not the history of goal, but one of them that nobody talks about. Matt scored the goal to get us to overtime. So he was out there for me. So then we get to overtime, and he draws the penalty. He's playing great. He draws the penalty, And he goes, power play, let's go. And I'm thinking, well, he just scored. Like, he's going to go. And he's like, Grant, what are you doing? Get on the ice. So, like, that's what I mean. Like, he had that bench management in him where he goes, that guy's playing good. I'm going to play him on the 6-on-5 just because it's a little more chaotic. And then we get to overtime and he's like, okay, well, we have a power play for a reason. So power play, let's go. But yeah, that was incredible. And to be totally honest, like, I feel like I gotta say this. That next year I might be more proud to be on the team the next year that we won it again. Cause it's just as hard. Like, it's not any easier to win. And we had lost a lot of very, very good players. There were, it was that was really fun too, because it was a different experience. It wasn't, people talk about 02 all the time. 02 was pretty fun too. 03.
So recently the Gophers lost to Quinnipiac in the national championship. And I know as a former Gopher, you probably had to feel for those guys.
There were a lot of guys in Tampa. I had just come back from Florida with my wife and we're going tomorrow. So I'm like, I can't spend a whole month in Florida. Like, this isn't going to work. So I couldn't stay. It's just, they had such an amazing year. So did Quinnipiac.
Absolutely. Taking nothing away from them.
Two best teams. It's been, like, I just felt like it was going to happen. It just felt like it was their time. It felt like it was their year. It felt, so there's, and I'm sure all the Quinnipiac alums are happy, and all the Gopher alums are like, dang, So, I was and my relationship with Bob is, probably even more over my affiliation with Minnesota. I would have wanted him to win, but when you humanize it and personalize it with, a guy like that, that's the other thing that stinks too.
Yeah.
Tell us about your experience about being drafted by the Ottawa Senators. What led up to that and what was the eventual outcome?
I didn't even know the draft was that day, to be honest.
Perfect. You weren't worried about it at all.
I got a phone call. I'm at home and I'm the one who answers the phone because you're young man. You don't go to the phone very often. My dad's golfing. My mom's doing something. So I answer the phone and the guy's like, this is the Ottawa Senators. We just drafted you in the 5th round. And I'm like, is this real? Like, he's like, yep, I'm going to meet you in 2 weeks and give you all your stuff. So I ended up calling my dad. I'm like, I just got drafted. And he's like, really? And because there was I wasn't like Central Scouting. I wasn't even on it. I don't think. This is back when there was 9 rounds. And I bet you they wish they had that pick back because I went 4 rounds ahead of Henrik Lundqvist. So, so I bet you they wish they would have taken him instead of me. Just shows you the draft. Yeah. You know what I mean?
You never know.
Were any teams talking to you prior to the draft at all?
Didn't have any meetings. Didn't do one thing.
Okay.
Nothing.
Complete surprise then. But a good surprise.
Great surprise, yep.
Oh, wow. All right.
You ended up playing 304 professional hockey games for a variety of AHL teams. And then you played a few games over in Germany. So what do you take away from your experience in the professional ranks?
I think, I do think the one thing that people don't understand is how good the American League is. In my opinion, it's the second best league in the world. I had some great coaches. I had some really good years in Binghamton. One year I had a really good year. And the coach of the team was a guy by the name of Dave Cameron. And Dave, he was actually the coach of the World Junior team this summer when I was coaching on the U.S. side. He was a Canadian side. He ended up being the head coach of Ottawa and some of that. And the one thing I learned from Dave out of that is he was honest with me. Like, he's like, I think you should be up. And right, wrong, or indifferent, right? Like, but he's like, you doing what I'm asking you to do. You're scoring, you're fighting, you're killing penalties, you're blocking shots. So like that's the thing that I think in coaching that, I have such a respect for that. I always wondered why, if I had a meeting with the coach and he's telling me I'm doing great, and then the next week I'm off the power play, why wouldn't you just tell me, hey, you're not playing hard enough, or you're not shooting it well enough, or I don't like how you look on the entry, or whatever. So then I can leave there and I can worry about those things.
How to fix it.
Yeah. So then I don't come off the power play.
Right.
Dave was just honest. Like, he was just like, and I'd do anything for him because I trusted him, and I think that, that's one thing in sometimes in pro hockey that's hard to find, because unless you're in the NHL, nobody wants to be where they are. If you're in the American League, you want to be up. If you're in the East Coast League, you want to be in the American League. Yeah. If you're in Europe, you want to be. So finding, that connection, I think is important for anybody in pro hockey.
Looking back, is there anything that stands out to you that limited your ability to make that jump to the NHL?
I think probably the biggest thing was just Ottawa was so good. They were playing in the Stanley Cup Finals. They were playing in conference finals, and it just kind of wrong team, wrong time. And that's just how it works. Sometimes it just that is what it is, and as I got kind of past it, like I probably could have continued to play. I was 28 or whatever I was. But I thought, okay, I'm not going to play in the NHL. Now I'm past that. So could I play in the American League? Yep. But what's next in my life? What am I going to do? And I had a couple kids, and it kind of led me to this. So kind of got lucky.
You certainly did.
All right. A couple shout outs to our sponsors, Computer Recovery Associates. They specialize in removing, monetizing, and recycling computer hardware from large data centers. Whether you're looking to relocate, repurpose, sell, or recycle, Computer Recovery Associates can help. Check them out at computerrecoveryassociates.com. And dedicated to serving their customers' heating and electrical needs efficiently, Kelly Heating and Electric have been named one of Bryant's Medal of Excellence winners. They provide expert advice from a friendly staff that can provide you with the knowledge you need to make the best decisions on your next electrical, heating, or air conditioning project.
After you retired from playing pro hockey, you ended up back at the University of Minnesota for about 8 years as an assistant. How'd that feel to be back at your alma mater, and what was your coaching role at that time?
It was great, and at the time, if you think about it now, it's kind of crazy. Don hired somebody with zero experience in coaching at all and zero college experience. And, I'm sure there was a lot of people that were in the business going,
what the heck?
What the heck is that? But Don was about people, and we had trust, and we had a relationship, and we stayed in touch after, even when I was playing, we still stayed in touch. I was a lot of learning early. And that's the one thing that, I didn't probably fully appreciate is what this player looks like compared to this player that's in this league. He's 17, he's 15, he's 20. Does he look like that? Is he going to turn into that? I was lucky in the sense that the rules had changed to where we were recruiting young players. Whether I think it's right or wrong, whatever. But I didn't know any different. I hadn't been living in a different set of rules. I was just coming into the business. So it's like, oh, that guy's Brady Shea. He's good. But those were the kind of guys that my wife could have picked him out. Like, that guy's better, way better than everybody else, So I guess for me, my timing in it probably was good because I just got to go in and watch and go in and learn. And maybe I had an advantage because nobody had watched 14-year-olds before. So I hadn't watched anybody either. But, maybe that was my advantage at that time, that I didn't have all this knowledge of what a 16-year-old looks like and what a 19-year-old looks like and what a you could kind of just recruit each group, with just little being naive. And, I think, so I was recruiting academics. It grew into, and obviously working with the forwards, it grew into Don, letting me run a power play or the power play. We got to a point, and I know there's a question, like what's the question about coming to Northern? It got to a point where Don said, if you want to do more, you're going to have to go somewhere else because I'm the head coach and I got to do something too.
And he kind of likes it there.
And not in the sense that like Don and I were doing it, but Mike Genzel was a very veteran seasons coach that kind of handled all the defensive side of things. And Don's always the head coach. You're always above it. But he said, if you want to continue to grow, you have to look elsewhere. And I wanted to go somewhere I thought you could win, and I thought you could win here.
So how did you end up here? I mean, was there an opening? Did they approach you? Did you approach them? How did the process work?
I pursued the job. I had the year before I'd interviewed for the USA hockey position as the national team development program. And I had, at that point, I had coached a World Junior team one time, and we won gold as an assistant. So I kind of figured, and I had a background with higher end players, and I thought I had a pretty good shot at it. And I probably, I don't know how it came off, but I thought I couldn't have done a better job on the interview. And they ended up going a different way because they hired an alum. It was the first alum that they had a chance to be able to bring back to the program, and which totally makes sense. But I was, at that time, I was really bummed out about it. But I think that experience helped me in my interview this time around. And when there was a committee, and I brought my wife and we came here, and but I definitely pursued the job. And I think that's important. I think if somebody wants to get a job, if you don't care or happy where you are, stay where you are. But if you know what I mean? Like if you want to try there's only 60 jobs, 62.
Right.
Yeah.
You got to go after it. Yeah. So I pursued it.
And obviously you've done very well. You've been credited with, to some degree, changing the team's culture and mindset here. What did you do? What did you bring in to change that?
I don't know how much I brought. I mean, I think expecting to win maybe was something that was that I tried to instill. But I think, like I said, I think that team was ready to go anyway. We had good seniors. We had good captains. And I coached them hard. Like I really pushed them, probably harder. That's what I tell kids in recruiting. It's hard here. Like if you're looking for just to go to school and be a hockey player, don't come here. Like if your goal is not to, and whatever your ceiling is, like if it's the NHL, it's great. If it's the American League, that's great. If it's a good college player, that's great. But if you're going to get to your ceiling, it's going to be hard. And guys that aren't driven and don't want to push and eat it. And I'm not saying you don't have fun, but like we have a culture where we lift in the mornings, and then even I'll walk in here after practice going up for the meal at night, and there'll be 10 guys in the locker room at 6:30 with no shirts on doing bench and pull-ups and squats, and like it's built itself. And then there's 4 more guys on the rink taking one-timers, and that's what you got to love it. Like if you really want to be a good player, there's certain guys that are genetically gifted and talented, but they're very few, and the rest of us have to work and grind and push. And I think that's probably what for me is leads to the academic or the athletic success. We've had great academic success. Our players have been pillars of the community. Like that to me are the things. Like, are you going to win and lose games? Yeah, you are. Like some games you're going to win, some games you're going to lose, some teams are going to be better, and but if this is what we expect on a day-to-day basis, you're going to be happy with the experience as a player, and we're going to be happy with the reputation of our program on campus and in town.
So you were a big part of your job in Minnesota was recruiting. So how does recruiting differ for you from Minnesota to here in Northern Michigan?
Well, at the time, again, the age was different. That's probably the biggest difference. But like, you just got to follow what your gut tells you. Like your fierce viewing on a player is usually right. So, are we maybe recruiting different areas than we would have before? Maybe, like I didn't have connections in the state of Michigan. So my thought process at Minnesota was, I'm not going to get Dylan Larkin, and they're not going to get Casey Middlestat. So Michigan will take their guy, we'll take our guy. But I felt like I could win that Casey type player in kind of Chicago West. So I didn't spend a lot of time in the state of Michigan recruiting. So I didn't have, it's taken me time to build the contacts that we have now, to be able to, kind of understand. Like, I think now we've become, pretty good in our own state and pretty good in Detroit. And, you're always going to have influxes of people, but you got to find areas that, that you can have success and, we're in Europe a lot more than we probably ever have been. Western Canada's always been good to this program, always been good. And I think you're going to always still go to Minnesota, and in particular, northern Minnesota. We've had good success there too.
If I'm a prospective recruit and you bring me in for a day, walk me through that day with that recruit.
We try to give you here's the thing, that by this point it wasn't like it was when we talked about recruiting visits when I was going through this. I had no idea what the locker room at wherever looked like. Every kid's seen this locker room. Every kid's seen whoever else is recruiting them's locker room. Yep. They've seen games on our rink. So all of this is part of it. It is. But what kind of relationship are you going to have with the coaching staff? So it's going to be important for us to build our relationship with you, and that's not just in that day. That's leading up to that day. But until you kind of look somebody in the eyes, it's not the same. And I think the number one selling point for our program is our players. Like, because players don't lie to players, and this is what I tell kids, and I tell, like, so you go to, you're on your visit and you come to me and you say, hey, how do you like it here? Oh, it's good. I like it's good. No, you don't. That's not genuine. Or, hey, how you like it here? It's unbelievable. Like, I can't even believe how great this is. Every day is great. And then they go on a rattle. Okay. It's like, it's the whole Nick Saban thing. It's the end and the but. He's a great player, and he's a fantastic kid and a hard worker. He's a great player, but it doesn't matter what happens before but, because you don't care anymore because there's a but.
Yeah.
So I love it here. It's awesome. This and that's what I think sells our program. We're really honest. We don't oversell. If it's the right, we find the right kind of guys for us. We find our kind of guys, and we kind of stick to our guns on it.
Sounds like mindset and culture have been established by those players.
100%.
Yeah. Who do you think brought that to here? I'm just wondering.
You tell me.
I think Coach did.
Coach
Potulny, he got those right kids, and he knew who's going to be able to help sell that program. Because you're right, kids are the ones who are going to sell the program.
Yep, and that's real, because that's
Absolutely.
as close to a real day as you can get. Hopefully we get them, they watch practice, obviously, and, they meet with the academic people, and they, meet with the compliance people, and they, so they have a good feel for, we give them a tour of campus, tour of town, but I don't think any of that stuff matters. I mean, it does, but it doesn't. Like the one thing that people are surprised by, they're surprised by Marquette and they're surprised by Northern.
Okay.
Beautiful buildings.
Beautiful campus.
Northern has put in the last 10 years about $100 million into campus. Marquette's a really fun town, cool town. Like that's what people don't get. Like they're surprised by that. Like this is really cool. And then, so you have their attention right away.
When you're out or your staff is out recruiting, are you looking at the USHL? Are you looking at the NAL? And what are you looking for in a player?
All the above. We're watching the USHL. We're watching the North American League. We're watching U16 hockey. We're watching high school hockey. We're watching the BCHL. We're watching the Alberta League. We're in Europe. So that's kind of the beauty of recruiting, like being able to compare people to leagues. I kind of think every player that ends up here needs to have an intangible. Like, what's your intangible? Are you fast? Are you big? Are you incredibly smart? Are you a weapon on the power play because you can just hammer a puck? So when a player, because when you see a guy and he's playing great, everything's working for him. But you got to have just your valleys, they can't be canyons. So they got to be able to rely on whatever their intangible is. Like speed never goes in a slump. Size never goes in a slump. Yeah. Hockey sense never goes in a slump. Do some go in and some, yeah. Maybe he's an elite passer. So to start, what's your intangible? And then from there, where do you fit in our future? What do we need? Not what do we want? What do we need? And I think that's kind of built now off of where your roster is, and you try plan for 2, 3, 4 years out, because you never know with decommitments, with transfers, with it's always fluid. There's players that come in the transfer portal that you're going to like. There's players that don't end up places that you're going to like. So you're recruiting every day. I don't care what sport you coach. It's the lifeblood of your program.
So the CCHA has been a very competitive conference. So what do you see as some of the challenges you face recruiting kids up here to Northern?
I think when I first started this, I ended up being the bridesmaid a lot. So we'd get our hat on the table, yeah, but they'd end up at wherever.
Yeah.
I think we get better cues on where we are at with people. I think I wasted a lot of time getting it right there, and they were never coming anyway, but they just really liked you and your program, and they didn't want to tell you no. So you just,
sure. Yeah.
So, like that I think is one thing I've probably learned the most is social cues from where we're at in the process with players.
Okay. You've got a rival up the road, not too far, Michigan Tech. Is that still the game that you get the pumped up most about, or is there another rival within your conference that gets the blood flowing more? Smile. I like the smile here.
He's thinking.
So when I 6 years ago, I heard about this rivalry, and I was kind of like, yeah, I got it. Like North Dakota, Minnesota, and Minnesota, Wisconsin, I got it. I didn't have it. Like, this is in a healthy way, because it's not just Michigan Tech University and Northern Michigan University. It's Houghton and the surrounding areas. It's Marquette and Ishpeming and Negaunee, and it's not just the game. Like, it's the whole week. It's the whole, and we have a very healthy rivalry with Lake State.
Yeah.
You know, we play for the Capital Cup. So that's real too. But you know, it's just, I think it's one of the top 5 rivalries in all of college hockey, and I feel honored every time I get to be part of it.
At the end of the game, whether you win or lose, you're going up against a good coach, Coach Sean up there in Michigan Tech. Did you guys know each other before this rivalry started when you came here, or did you guys develop a respect for each other after that?
More after I got this job. I didn't know Joe before that, and like he's become, you know, I probably talk to him as much as I talk to anybody in the business and coaching, you know, and what he's done there and the success they've had, and you know, not just on the ice, but you know, the advancements they've made in their locker room and all the things they've done and pushed, and you know, I think it's healthy for our league when, you know, those rivalry games mean something in the standings. They mean something at the end of the year. They, you know, I think those are important things for us.
So, Coach, you've been a college coach since you left the professional ranks of playing. Do you see yourself remaining as a college coach for your career? Are you interested in getting into the professional level at all, or what do you think about that?
I mean, you never say never, but like, I'm a college guy. You know, it's who I am. I enjoy everything about college sports. I enjoy going to a football game and we don't play. I enjoy sitting in head coaches meetings and talking to other coaches that are outside of our sport. Hey, what are you guys doing? What's working? I enjoy being part of these young men's lives and turning them into men.
Yeah, you really do.
You know, so I'm a college hockey guy.
Okay.
After this year, how many players are you losing? And with that in mind, what can we expect out of the recruits coming in and the team coming out on the ice next year?
We've lost a fair amount of forwards up front. You know, we've lost some guys who can generate. You know, we've lost 60 plus goals off last year's team.
Wow,
that's a big hit.
Yep, but we've done that before. You know, and people always emerge. That, like, I think for us, the number one driver on our success, I don't worry about us scoring. I never do. I never have. We find a way to score. It's how are we defending? And, you know, we kind of started probably at Christmas getting closer, and then, you know, then you really kind of start dialing in, you know, the defensive acts, and all of a sudden we win 7 in a row. And, you know, we're a minute and a half away from winning that game, the championship. We're going to have new players in different roles, and you know, but we have, since we've had Loggins and Rockwood and Nardi and you know, Craighead, and you know, there's been very good players here that, you know, they got to graduate at some point. You know, so now Vanderbeck's gone and Kiefer's gone, and you know, so you fill it with, you know, some guys that were pretty good last year. I mean, like Pap scored 15 goals. Artem Schlane's a pretty good player. Andre Gontos is coming back. Mike Colella scored 15 as a sophomore. You know, Connor Eddy kind of came on, and that second line center. And we got some freshmen that we think can help. You know, I like where we're at. I think it's probably depth-wise, we probably have more depth defensively on our team than we've ever had, from the goalie to all the D. So I mean, I like our team. What that means, I don't know, but I like our team.
So getting to the end of spring here, even though you wouldn't notice it looking at it outside with all the snow that we got recently. But let's face it, the UP of Michigan is just a beautiful part of our country. So what are some of the things you like to do when you're not coaching hockey?
Anytime I could talk my buddy out to get me on his boat, then I'll be doing that.
Fishing?
Yeah. You know who's got the best boat?
Probably Coach Sean.
It's always your buddy. He's got the best boat. And I like playing golf. And I like that you can play golf so late. Like I can go out to the club and, at 8:45 and play 13 holes, and there's I love that we're kind of on the westernmost point of the Eastern time zone. So we get those, sun later in the night.
That is nice. I remember growing up and getting mad when I had to go to bed when it was still light out. But
yeah, I can understand that.
let's give a quick shout out to your assistant coaches, Grant, and tell us a little bit about them and what each one of them, what their role is here at the university.
Byron Poole is our associate head coach. He's been here 6 years, same time I got here. Didn't really know him, but in kind of the, as you're hiring the position, there's just a lot, like you could almost finish your sentence type of thing. He's does an incredible job with the penalty kill finished top 5 in the country, and he's in charge of that. He's recruiting. I think probably the thing that I probably think is the most important is he's just got a good way about him. Like he's just a really even keel guy. Players love both of them. Nick's been with us for 2 years. He's a rock star in the making. His energy level, like having some youth on, and I say that tongue in cheek because you guys probably think I'm much younger than you, but having some youth has been good. Like it's really, he's got great energy with the players. He's done an incredible job recruiting. Like if you look at our players that we took out of transfer before Nick kind of got going, and now, since it's just, we're not in there as much because I like our recruits better, so I like, we were comparing, one of the D and a guy that was in the portal, and I'm like, I want to bring our guy in. Like, I want to work with him. He's better. Okay. So, Nick does a lot of that. He works with the power play. We're in both guys doing, like, I'm just so fortunate. Jeff Cornock is our director of hockey operations. It's just, everybody here is a grinder. It's just Megan Deschamps, like, it's just Megan's our trainer and she grinds, and it's just, it's a fun group. We work hard, we have fun. And I like coming to work. Like I have that office, the head coach's office. I am never in there. Never. We sit around this table and we talk hockey. And nice. You feel like you've never worked a day in your life.
It's always a team sport then. I mean, you're out in your office, you're here with everybody else. Team atmosphere.
100%. Like there's no, like, at the end of the day, do I have to make the final decision? Yeah. But like, there's no, you can't say that or don't think that or don't. I mean, it's just, we're all in it battling to try make our players better, win more games. That's it.
Well, I'll tell you, Coach, when we met you, you were passing through Chippewa Falls on your way. I believe you were going to play St. Thomas that weekend, and you stopped by for an hour at the rink. And we could kind of sense by watching your players before practice. JC's our social butterfly of the podcast. He gets around and likes to talk to everybody, but he just couldn't believe how energetic and high-spirited your kids were. And then when we saw you on the ice, it was great how they interacted. While you're running drills, it's great, but the kids were having fun. They're high-fiving. They're having a good time, and you're in there in the mix with them. And then how approachable you were with us when we talked to you after practice is like, you were so welcoming. It was just like, we got to get to the UP and say hi to him. And you told me, if you guys come to the UP, I'll do the interview. And here we are. So thank you for doing that. Appreciate it.
You guys coming. It's been fun. It's been a good interview.
Coach, we thank you for your time. It's been absolutely great, and your insight is great, and your enthusiasm about the sport and what you've accomplished is, it just shows the ethic that you have.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
All right, folks, please remember to say hi to our sponsors when you drop in on them. Hopefully it's not because you got to have surgery, but seems to be the way Mogi and I end up doing it. But, hey, give us a rating and a review on your social media platforms. It helps us out. Mogi?
Absolutely. And, again, a huge thank you to our special guest, Grant Potulny, as well as you folks, our audience. Please remember our sponsors for this podcast, Kelly Heating and Electric, Computer Recovery Associates, Dooley's Pub, and Chippewa Valley Orthopedics and Sports Medicine. And folks, please follow us on your favorite social media platforms as well as YouTube. And remember, folks, until next time, stay on your inside edges.